Hey everyone, it's Jonathan from Leica's Mobile Mapping Support Group, here for this video on the Finalization tab. So we've got our project here that we've been working through in this video series with we're right after the optimization and QA phase, where we went through and looked at the data to make sure it was all good and acceptable for us. So since we're at that point, we go down to the Accept button and we say Accept. And you can see this automatically cycles us into the Finalize and Export tab. And what we get in this phase is we get these options over here on the right for our Finalize and then all of our exports. So they're grouped into these categories because they both will, all the Finalize options will do something that happens within the software, and then all of the export options will do something that happens as an export. It will actually create a file. So the first thing we have is high resolution point cloud. So you can see we can actually adjust our scanner range that we want to create the high resolution point cloud out to. I have mine set here at the defaults, but I will check this button on. What that's going to do is going to turn right now what we're seeing is a low resolution point cloud. It's a little bit easier on the PC, a little bit quicker to process. Then it goes back and it's like a subsampling. Whenever we check this box on and run this Finalize, it's going to create the actual full point cloud, like off of the profilers, 100% of the data. Then next we have the point cloud RGB colorization, which is going to take our photo data and then apply RGB values to the point cloud, because up to this point we've just had intensity as hue. So I'll check that on. And then you can see we also have the option for the mask editor. So the mask editor, if I was to turn the photo bubbles on here in the tracks, the mask editor will let us go into a photo and it will allow us to trim out anything. But for the TRK system, there's usually not a whole lot of editing that you have to do for the mask. It pretty well covers the vehicle already. You can see anywhere green is going to actually be not included in the colorization values. So we pretty much got the vehicle covered out here. Yep, that's covered as well. But here's where you can go and adjust this mask. And if you got a vehicle you use all the time, you could maybe export the mask and then import it into your other jobs. So I'm going to say apply to that. Then we have point cloud classification, which is going to work through this point cloud and apply classification values to it. So I'm going to go ahead and check the box for that as well. Image anonymization is also going to go through, and that's going to do our license plate blurring, vehicle blurring, face blurring. So I'll go ahead and check that on as well if I want to use that. And then image enhancement. Here we have the option to actually apply different saturation levels to the images and things of that nature. So I'm not going to apply that to this because we have to open an image first and then we apply the saturation. But this is where you would do it. So like let's say that you had too much white balance or too much sun exposure. You can pick defined frames. Like let's say you had like sun hit the camera from frame 59 here to frame 54. You could put those values in here and then adjust your saturation, brightness, and contrast, and then change an image as you see fit if you need to adjust an area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run these operations, and then we'll come back to the video once that's finished, and then we'll work our way down into export once we take a look at what these options did for us. So I'll click Finalize now. Anonymization, yes. And I will see you back when this is finished. Alright, our finalization is complete. Just for reference, that took around 3 hours for a data set this size to run high-res, RGB, classification, and anonymization. So we'll go ahead and hit Finalize Completed here and take a look at what we got. So you can see the data starts to densify a little more because we're loading in that high-resolution point cloud now, not just the preview. And we should have a few more options here now that we've run this as far as the way we can view the data. So we can go here to this, we can see our RGB values in our point cloud. We can zoom in, see how everything's a lot more high res, how everything looks now. We can also look at our classification. And we can look at our classification layers by clicking on this paperclip over here. This allows us to turn classification layers off and on. So due to that, our classification that we have here, like let's say for example we wanted to turn off buildings, we could just turn off all the buildings. You can see that layer turned off here. And then we can also, the way that this works with exporting is whatever you have visible, it will export. So if you wanted to isolate your never classified layer, Or let's say you just wanted to isolate your ground layer, you could just show selected, or sorry, you can hide all. It's going to take it a second. So we hide all there, and then we can just turn our ground layer on, and that isolates our ground. So like say we just want ground and buildings, we could do so. I'm going to show everything again though, and then we'll take a look at our blurring. Okay, I'm going to change this back to, we'll just go back to RGB. So if we take a look in here, let's just look at something that has a car in it. One of these photo bubbles in the intersection. I'll just double click into. We should see some blurring. You can see there inside of our high resolution images, it's been processed to blur out the vehicles and any sort of branding or signage. Okay. So now we'll go back to our ortho view, and we'll go over the rest of the export options now that we've actually finished our finalize step. So this drop down here controls our where we're actually going to export to. By default, if I click on this, you'll see it's going to the export folder of the project itself. So here's our project that's on my hard drive. Here is the export folder within it, right above the job level. So by default, that's where everything's going to go. If you want to change that, you can click that button and select a different folder. JPEGs will export JPEGs from our side cameras and also our 360 sphericals or 360 panos. LGS is going to create an LGS file. We have the option here to decimate. If we check the box for decimation, it's going to try to thin that data out some, and then from underneath that we can control the voxel size as well. LAS data, same thing, voxel size and decimation. E57, voxel size and decimation. So we just have these decimation options for everything here. The other controls for export are going to be located in the settings menu. So if we go up here to settings, under the Finalize and Export tab here, we have the option for LAS export to export by track. Multiple files per track. This is just split into, it's 50 million points per file. And then export by track and classes will split it by classification layers too. And then this allows us to split by scanner. Scanner 1, scanner 2 being split into separate files. Then we've got our options here for E57 and LGS as well. Undistorted images will that'll export the undistorted images from our high-res cameras. And then TRK dataset for Pegasus Manager. When we run that, it'll actually create, it'll format a TRK dataset in the same format that, let's say, a Pegasus 2 or a Pegasus backpack dataset is collected. But with that, all you do now is just select the different options that you might want to have exported for your deliverables. Typically, you're going to be using LAS 357, LGS if you're going to be going into, say, like Cyclone 3DR or another Leica product, or to TrueView to view this data in TrueView. That's the option that you would need to select there as well. But that's it as far as the Finalize and Export tab. So we got a pretty good project here that's ready to export and go.